Hey, so today I'm talking with Tanya Cole-Lesnick, and she is a therapist who does healing work. You did like social work, and I don't know. I'm just learning about you now. So thank you for coming on here. I just felt like your message was similar to mine, and has like a branch in the similar directions as the work I do. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Karen. I'm excited to be here and just to see what unfolds between us as we chat.
For sure. So the primary work you do, you were saying before we hit record, you have like three aspects. So you want to get into that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I actually became a psychotherapist and now I'm focusing much more on personal development coaching because I think there are some constraints with psychotherapy and I prefer a more open sort of process. So it's a nice overlap between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I do individual work and group work and in person retreats. The other work is virtual, really focused on helping people start to identify some of the limiting beliefs and the paired behaviors that are in the way for them and to help them start to clear those. I've been calling that energetic clutter,
Mm-hmm.
and to help people clear that so that they can focus on what really matters most to them. Because if they're not paying attention, that stuff takes up so much space and so much energy.
For sure. And like when I'm working on people, sometimes I'll see the energetic clutter like in their fields. So like you're helping people like dissect it and find the origination of it. And I'm just going in there whisking things off. So I think it's really kind of interesting. Like we're both doing the same similar work, but from different angles.
Yeah, I love that. Different ways in.
Yeah.
And I think your work, my work, and then helping people start to connect to their bodies and learning sort of when are they feeling depleted and then starting to understand a little bit about what that's about and whatever helps them start to touch on that information.
And when I was reading through your website, you mentioned in there like it was in your 20s that you started to go to therapy, and that was like 30 years ago, and it was more
Hmm.
taboo then and all that stuff. So, and like that really shifted your whole trajectory, and you even changed careers as a result.
Totally. Yeah. So when I was in my mid 20s, I was really struggling with my own. I wanted a long term love relationship. It wasn't happening for me. I really didn't understand it. And I was hesitant at first to even consider therapy because I felt some stigma and also was very dismissive of what my issues were. But with some time, I decided to give it a try. And it was in that process of first connecting to somebody where I could be vulnerable and start to share my story. So individually, I felt safe to start talking, and that helped me clear some things. And then I went into group therapy scared and worried that the limiting belief that I was carrying, and there was definitely more than one, but the one that was primary at that time was that maybe I was unlovable.
Oh,
And so, because that was a story that I was holding, and then I kept sort of reinforcing it by struggling to have these long term love relationships, it was like proof to me, oh, yeah, maybe you are unlovable.
yeah.
And then I spent a lot of time sort of curating how I was going to show up to other people. And by doing that, I was not embodied. I was not really that present because I was critiquing everything that was coming out of my mouth. And so going into a group situation where I took some risk and I was starting to be vulnerable, but also was able to be in spaces where other people were vulnerable as well and sharing our sort of inner worlds with each other, it helped me shift and change and poke holes in that limiting belief that I was carrying and shift that story. It was no longer that I was unlovable. I started to understand some of the complexities of being human and having needs and anxiety that gets kicked up, and that's not really about truth, but some of the stories that we carry. And it helped me release some of that. I met my husband at the time pretty early on, but it was the process of connecting to myself through those connections with other people that led to me deciding to switch my career. So I went back to school.
That's interesting. And so like I'm wondering if in the group format, is it because other people are like, dude, I see you this way. Like, what are you saying? Like, is that kind of a feedback where they're like, they're just mirroring back at you, or not even mirror, but they're saying to you what they see that kind of helps
Ye-
you see it for yourself. Is that?
Yeah, I think there's lots of layers. That's a big one
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I think it's that. I think it's seeing other people who you think um are amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about similar insecurities. And
Right.
so as you see them struggle and you don't receive them the way
Mm-hmm.
they're talking, it
Right.
helps you consider, oh, maybe it's happening with me as well. So
Right.
that getting yourself mirrored back to you, yes, feeling some resonance as you hear people talk about their journeys and places that they get stuck and some of the struggles that they have. All of that is really helpful about being in a group with other people. It helps you see what resonates, what comes up, what do you relate to, and then start to maybe change how it weighs on you.
That's pretty cool. So then you went to become a therapist yourself. Like you left you were a graphic designer, you said, and then
Yeah.
you,
Yep. I was a graphic designer. I went back to school, got my master's in social work, and have been a licensed clinical social worker for 30 years.
Mhm.
But moving more into the personal development coaching realm, just because there's more flexibility with that.
Mhm.
And I really love different ways of working, and just and also people worldwide, because now we can really connect so easily with Zoom and other ways of just connecting with people virtually. And so that opens some things up in terms of communication and being available with other people. So I'm just exploring different layers and different ways of working with people.
So people have found you who are like on the other side of the globe and stuff when you're working with them.
Yeah, yep. And so that's really cool to be able to connect to people all over the place.
It
Yeah.
is pretty neat. I know. I had a girl who was in Alaska, and I remember being like, "How did you find me?" And then just being like, "That's so neat," and I could still do
Yeah.
the same work that I do in person.
Yeah, I love that.
So how is it that you work then? You do, like you said, I know you said you have the different
Hmm.
facets, but like it's almost like a talk therapy, but then is your intuition kicking in where you're kind of shooting out like, oh, by the way, I feel this, or I notice this, or however you intuit.
Yep. Yep. I think I definitely, uh, for a long time, I felt like I needed to show up in a much more sort of clinical way, use that clinical terminology. I'm putting up the air quotes, that like there was sort of this prescribed way of showing up. And I think that's part of what I'm honoring more and more as I'm continuing on in my career. I mean, I've been doing this work for a really long time.
Right.
And so the answer is yes. I mean, really honoring my own intuition
Mhm.
and picking up on things, picking up on other people's energy. When do they talk about something and you can hear like it feels heavy, or it feels very covered over, or they've repeated something multiple times, and we want to honor the importance of something that keeps showing up. And so those are the kind of things that I will reflect back to people as we're trying to get some clarity on what's going on for them that might be in the way for them. What do they really want? Where do they light up? I love giving people that feedback when I see them lighting up about something.
Yeah.
It's so noticeable, the difference between when they're feeling heavy about something versus when they're really connecting to something. And they don't always know. I mean, often when I give that feedback, it does reinforce something that they had a sense about. And so that
Mhm.
can be really helpful. But to get that clarity can help them start to see where they want to intentionally put their energy so
Mhm.
that they can honor those parts of themselves that get lit up versus feeling stuck in this place where the shoulds and the have tos and I can't, and just starting to tease that out.
So helping them with their language, that they're like catching the language that they're using,
Mm-hmm,
offering
mm-hmm.
them tools to kind of like reverse or shift gears or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And just even to highlight it, I mean, sometimes, not even sometimes, like just naming some of those patterns is
Mhm.
so helpful and important, because until you name it, you might not even realize that, oh, wait, I'm doing this thing that I don't even have to do. Like I feel like I have to do it. But yeah, who says? And starting to poke holes in some of these narratives that we all have, that we've held on to growing up, from mostly from childhood.
Mhm.
Sometimes in adulthood we have some intense experiences that also come in as these limiting beliefs and these faulty narratives that are kind of running the show if we don't catch them.
I know that one author I love, Sonia Choquette. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's in the psychic,
Yeah.
spiritual
Mm,
realm, but she's all about empowering people with like tapping into their intuition. But
yeah.
she mentions like if you name it, you claim it kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
Just like kind of giving it like illuminating it.
Yep. Yep.
So if you are helping people to identify their limiting beliefs, are you having them figure it out for themselves by kind of giving them guideposts, or are you actually just saying, this is what I see?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Like, I will usually offer what I see,
Mhm.
but remind them that they're the ones that know. And so to take that information with um into their bodies, really. Do,
Mhm.
do you feel that in your body? Does that resonate? Do you feel a sense of knowing as we're talking about this?
Right.
And so often it's a yes, but sometimes it's a not quite that. And then we kind of play around with some other
Mhm.
ideas and come back to checking in with your body. What now? Does that feel more in alignment with what resonates for you? And then when we get to a place of yes, and we really have some clarity about that, and it is likely that it's more than one
Mhm.
narrative that somebody's holding on to, we
Right.
sort of pick a place to start putting some intention and energy towards breaking that pattern, because it can be so entrenched,
Yeah.
and it takes being very intentional to start switching that
Mhm.
and shifting that in our lives.
Yeah. Just even saying like, I always, or I am, it's just like,
Mhm.
what if the red X? Like,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, watching for
Or I
language.
never, yeah, never,
Yep.
always, and I am. Those are like such huge
Mhm.
related things to like pay attention to about like what
Yeah.
you're manifesting and what you're creating as a reality in your life.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
with I was saying to you before we hit record about like the theta healing training I had like back in 2009. We talked about the limiting beliefs and we would cross check them with muscle testing. So you might
Mm.
think, I don't think money is evil, or people who have money is evil. But if you cross check it with your muscle testing, like, well, somewhere in you do,
Yeah.
you might think
Yeah.
you don't. Check
Yep.
your body thinks differently, could be from your parents, your grandparents, or your environment, or I don't know that your work goes into past lives, but like it could go that far,
Yeah.
sometimes like we just hold on to these things. Like, I'm not safe to be a healer. That's a big one, because
Yeah.
so so it's like in that class we had a whole pages and pages of limiting beliefs to muscle test ourselves on, so we could kind of back
Mhm.
pace ourselves to clear up that junk, that energetic,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really super interesting when you can kind of tackle it.
I love that. I actually, as you're talking, I didn't tell you this earlier because I hadn't remembered it, but I had done a training with Martha Beck, who is
Heard that.
uh she used to be on Oprah, and she's like one of the primary life coaches.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that she did in her training was, okay, we did some of this like muscle testing as we talked about things. And I
Yeah.
totally know what you're talking about. And we saw that as well, where it
Yeah.
makes such a difference in your body.
Right. Totally. And then and you actually, in doing that work, because it taps into the psychic realm, you can you as the practitioner can actually see like things kind of like leaving the body, as you're
Mm,
releasing that, and it's kind of like pulling the part out of the Jenga,
mhm.
and then the rest of the stack falls. But then there might be a little nitty-gritty leftovers, and then you got to tackle them. There's always more layers.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
yeah,
always
yeah.
more.
Always more layers. And I also think that I know in my work with people, they get so frustrated when they come back to old places and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I thought I cleared this. I thought,
Yeah.
and so also when we're at a point in our lives when maybe there's more going on, we've got a little bit more intensity, some, dealing with loss or grief or something that takes up a lot of our sort of energy, and it's also very painful, and we're more dysregulated during that time,
Mhm.
we're going to come back to some of this old stuff. It's different. We're
Mhm.
not in the same place that
Right.
we were, but those are our tender spots.
Mhm.
So to know that we'll come back to some of our tender spots, and to not, because I think what happens a lot to people's narratives that they have connected to that is like, see, I thought I was okay and I'm not okay again. And instead, for that to be a reminder of like, you're going through something and you
Yeah.
need to really take good care, especially good care of yourself during this
Back at
time.
how far you have come, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they need somebody to like point, you know, to like look back, look behind them, like point behind,
Hmm.
how far you've come. Like you're like,
Yeah.
don't give yourself so much like hard time about this, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
it's fun. So it's fun, not really, but it's fun when you talk about it, but not when you're in it necessarily. But it is
Right.
to like see like our progress, even though you're in a puddle on the ground crying about it. You're like, but I have made progress.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah. I
doesn't bother
mean,
me as much.
yes, it's very painful, but it can be so helpful to
Mhm.
start to realize, okay, it doesn't mean what I'm telling myself it means, and so I'm able to let that go
Dust
now.
yourself off and kind of like
Y-
get some fresh
Yeah,
perspective on it. Uh,
yeah.
but when you do the group things and you also do retreats, like what
Mhm.
did that go?
Yeah. So right now, the retreats part of what I offer is growing. And so what I've been offering is this deep reset retreat with this wonderful therapist, Kathy Anisi. And she and I really help take people through a journey of very deliberately connecting to their limiting beliefs. We literally dissolve it. We have like dissolvable paper that we
Oh,
kind of
cool.
start to identify those beliefs. We dissolve them. We focus a lot on that initially, and then we start to visualize, what would you want to do instead? What does your best life look like? And start to create space for that. And we do some sound healing, and it's such a beautiful community when we create that space. I think the love that gets formed between the women, the bonds are so beautiful and powerful, and I love it. And so that's what I've been doing so far. I'm just developing some new retreats with another person who's not a therapist, and she and I are going to focus a little bit more on play and creative experiences that can also bring people into some of that work of knowing ourselves and connecting to other people. And so I'm really excited to start to develop that. The current retreats have been in New York, Upper Westchester, Hudson Valley,
Mhm.
but that's getting expanded. I'm going to do some in Florida. Kathy and I are going to do some in Florida, and I'm going to do one in, oh man, I'm forgetting the name. What's that place in Arizona that's got that
Sedona.
energy?
Sedona.
Yes, thank you. I
When you
couldn't think
first
of
said
the
other
name.
places, I was like, oh, probably Sedona.
I know. Yeah. So we're going to start in Sedona, but we're going to explore other areas as well. So really growing that part of the work that I do, and stay tuned. I think we're looking maybe March, April for a couple that will be coming next. But I love that space, and it's such a growing
And
space.
it's like such an insulated and safe, like, you know, container,
Yeah.
just to have that, to be held and to be without your guards up. Like I do moon circles, like sometimes once a month, sometimes I skip a month, but like I do them pretty consistently. And that's such, it reminds me of that kind of feeling where it's like everyone's allowed to just dump their stuff. Nobody's telling them it's okay, patting their head,
Mhm.
like you're just listening, you're just holding
Yeah.
space, and
Right.
everybody talks at their own pace, and you're not interjecting. You're just
Right.
allowing them to be. And then at
Yeah.
the end, you had the dissolvable paper. I had a client who told me that they did that when they got home from work every day, because they were like in a heavy duty therapist, like I think they were working in a prison or something like that, like something
Uh-huh.
where they were like in rehab type, but it was a lot. So when
Yeah.
he came home from work, he would write everything out on the paper and then drop it in the water before he even walked in the door.
Love
And
that.
that was the first time I heard of that kind of paper. But then
Uh-huh.
with the moon circles, it's like fire, but it's the same, fire, water, whatever. We're transmuting shit, So
That's exactly right. Because I was just even as you're saying that, it's like any kind of intentional representation
right,
of sort of that process
letting
of
go. Yeah.
letting go, being unarmored in a
Mhm.
place that feels safe. I also just went on a retreat in Italy in September. And so to be able to be a participant and go and clear my own stuff is amazingly healing and I love it. And that's a space I love to do it in. And we have a connected group that we've continued with where we've stayed in touch. And that's been a recent discussion about like, how amazing is it to be in a place where we're trusting each other enough to let our armor down and to
Yeah.
really show up fully in that space.
It's really so valuable. And like, it might sound weird on the outside, but until you experience it, then you get it. And you're like, oh my God, I love this. This is like just,
Yeah.
it's to be so raw and real and like not judged. You're just,
Yeah.
your authentic self. Um,
Yeah.
when you were speaking before about like the retreat and the second person that you're folding in to do creative things, it made me think of a friend of mine, Kristen, does like art therapy, and she had us do a meditate and paint event a few times at my space. And it was really cool because it's like dream interpretation, like anything, you
Yeah.
look at it, and she was able to like dive in on how you painted your picture.
Yep.
And it was just the best. So I wondered if you
Yeah.
had any like art therapy kind of in the mix of things with your offerings.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we're thinking of is not so much art therapy as art therapy. Neither of us are trained in that per se, but it's to use that vehicle
Mhm.
of expression and to learn from everybody what came up for you in that expression, and then to connect it to the journey where everybody is starting to share with each other. And so to have these different ways in and have a little mess and a little play is just,
Yeah,
really fun.
I know it is it's truly therapeutic. And even if it's not in an official lens of art therapy, it is therapeutic.
That's right.
And you could analyze your own picture, and then you look at your neighbor's picture and you go, oh my God, like everybody has their own unique expression. And
That's right.
kind of super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's funny, the woman that I'm running retreats with, her name is Kristen as well. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else like about your story that you want to share, like that I didn't touch on, like, or your family, or like, because I saw that you said you're married 30 years. I've been
Mhm.
married 21 years. So it's like it is a feat to be
Yeah.
fully married, and the
Yeah.
joy that brings you. And you met your husband because of the therapy, or because it was at that time that you were getting worked out, that you were like working yourself out.
More that
Okay.
because at that time I was showing up differently. And
Mhm.
I know as I was healing from my own limiting beliefs, really,
Mhm.
um, and I said I wasn't embodied as I was sort of curating everything that I was putting together, it helped me let go of that process. And so I stopped curating everything and I took more risks and I showed up more fully. And during that time, I dated a few people, but I could tell that um, I was showing up differently. People were gravitating towards me in a different way that I hadn't experienced before. And so during that time, he was just somebody I had met, but I was more present and
Mhm.
more able to connect to him. Yeah, I mean, as far as what more to say, I think that being married and having kids and being in my own space of valuing communicating from an authentic place. And I would say, as a family and all our different relationships, there's a level of communication that we've been able to experience in our lives that has been such a driving force for all of us. And watching my daughters choose partners and make some decisions about how they want to connect to other people and how much they value being able to connect to other people from an authentic
Mhm.
place is just it's just a beautiful thing to really behold and to sort of see them taking those journeys where they really have learned how to and not that this is easy, but learned how to honor themselves and check in with themselves so that as they're on their journeys, they're being honest and they're honoring their hearts and they're able to communicate things. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure you
it's,
raised them to be very open and communicative and all of that, because just of your role.
yeah.
I'm friends with some therapists, and like, it's cool to see like how their kids seem to be more mature and aware
Mm,
when they're raised with like healthy communication. You realize that healthy communication is not a given.
right, right, for sure.
Giving these
And
tools,
again, And not to say it's easy. I mean, when I went to this retreat in Italy in September, I had my own stuff to share and I had my own sort of vulnerable parts of where I'm at in my journey. And that is hard and painful, even though
You've
I
done the
do
work.
this work.
Yeah, yeah. I know
Yeah,
we're not exempt from it as much as we would like to be.
that's right.
I know when I'm
That's,
like in my own way and like grouchy and like whatever, I'm like, I know I'm oozing like my whatever, my like a nasty mood or like a just a toxic kind of attitude. And I'm like, I'm aware of this. I know, I have my,
yeah.
but like maybe I can't access them or I can't get in to get a session somewhere or other. So it's
Hmm.
hard when you're like a witness of your own BS,
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
You're
still
like,
human.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, how do you give yourself some grace about it, right?
Mhm.
Like, how
Yeah.
do I catch myself? Know that I'm not showing up as my best self in this
Yeah,
moment. And then do what I need to do to take good care of myself so that I'm not continuing to ooze that on myself and other people around me. Yeah.
what is your favorite tool or one of the main, like, I'm sure you have several things that you do to help reset you. Do you
Hmm.
have a therapist that you see? Do you go get body work? Do you go do, I think I read you like hiking, so
Uh-huh.
you know what works for you to kind of help
Yeah.
balance you. So you make sure you
Yeah. Totally. And I talk to people as well to create their own list of self-care stuff that works for them because I think
right,
it's so individualized.
right.
So yes, I love to go hiking, and because I do all my work virtually, it's also really nice for me to have some face-to-face connection with people in this hiking group that I'm part of.
Nice.
So I do that, and being out in nature and moving, all of that's great. I love massage. I get massage done periodically. Um, in my retreats, I do we offer sound healing as
Yeah,
something that we offer people, but I don't do enough of that kind of thing on my own. And I know you and I were talking about Reiki and all of that. So
yeah,
I think there's room there for me to expand some of that.
yeah.
Um, I love just simple things like petting my dog and looking in his face. And I do like a regular check in with myself throughout the day, multiple times in the day, just like, what do you want? What do you need? And really, that's to make sure that I'm not getting down my path of, I've got to work faster. I need to be productive at all times because that's a limiting belief that
Mhm.
can run the show for me if I'm not mindful of it.
Right,
And so doing multiple check-ins throughout the day can help me catch myself and rest
right.
periodically. That's something that I have to be
Yeah,
very,
resting is productive, actually. You
yeah,
don't think that because of our culture, but it's really,
that's right. That's right. And so I know I need to be really intentional about that and give myself permission about that. So to catch myself is sort of a practice for me.
totally.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's like one thing when you mentioned like petting your dog is like such a simple thing. Of course, I love petting my pets as well.
Yeah.
It made me think of, like, one thing I do that when I know I'm in a good place is I'm making dinner mindfully with my audiobook. I have like an Outlander because I love Outlander, so I'm like slowly listening to the books, and it's like when Outlander's on and I'm in the kitchen, I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
Like baking only happens once in a while because it's like I can't eat all the cookies. I will, but like when
Yeah.
I bake, that brings me joy. And
Yeah.
so it's like there's these couple things, and like I have two Instagram accounts. One is like they're both my business related, but like one is just nature, and I also
Mhm.
podcast there, but it's like nature, crystals, whatever. And the other one's like about the things going on at the store. So I notice if I've been slacking on my own self-care time, because even though it's a walk around the block, I'll snap pictures of like pretty, like the way the dew looks on things. You
Yeah.
notice that my Instagram is like, I haven't updated in a while. It's kind of like, ooh,
A
like either because it
reflection.
was overcast for many days or because I've gotten away from like being present and like
Yeah.
being in. So like that's a creative exercise for me, to not only take the pictures, but then to edit them and to put them up. Like that's part of my own little happy ritual.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. But I love the specificity of everything you just said, like knowing what are you listening to or watching while you're making dinner? Like, what are some of those things that you really feel you come alive during, you
Yeah,
feel very present doing? And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and also for me, I've reconnected to some of my old like creative stuff that I kind of abandoned for a bit. We talked about a bit, is I used to be a graphic designer, and that was just sort of, I went to design school. It was the way I was very visually artistic and I enjoyed doing that. And then when I switched careers, I kind of put that aside
Mm.
and coming back to some of those activities just to play, just
Yeah.
to, yeah, is really, I mean, I can get lost in that. That's when we can get into the state of flow and it's can be really healing.
Yeah, I love making collages. That was my favorite
Mm,
thing when I was younger. And I'll make a vision board. We'll do a vision board workshop like once a year or something. So that's like, it's so fun to like tap back into that because I like really love that. I would
yeah,
back when life was like a lot emptier, I had a lot
yeah,
more free time to do things like that more often.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right.
Coloring, doodling,
And I think that's such a good point, is like when we don't have the free time, it's very easy to put that stuff on the back burner. And like you said, with rest, if we can really honor that this is part of us connecting to joy, connecting to peaceful parts of ourselves, and do it maybe in smaller chunks. We don't have the time that we used to have, but smaller chunks still can help us connect to
yeah,
that
it's so
place.
nourishing.
Yeah.
My friend and I went away this past weekend, and where we went was very limited with internet, which was so fortunate.
Yeah.
We really couldn't do much online, which was great.
Yeah.
And the cabin we stayed in had a chalkboard on the wall, and I made a mandala, and then she drew onto, like, she added to it, like, and then
How
we
fun.
brought like mandala coloring books and like doodle like craft supplies, and we just sat
Yeah,
and colored at night. We went to bed at 10 because we were like, can we
I
go to bed at
love
10? Like,
that.
it's only us. Like, we're not in charge of
Yeah.
us. I want to go to bed early. So
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
it was really so nice to just be able to like have fun and only think about ourselves and our immediate needs because we weren't there with our families or our husbands. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
making
awesome.
time for that's important.
Mhm.
But thanks for chatting
Yeah.
with me. It was nice to talk to you and hear about what you do and all of that good stuff. So if people wanted to find you, where would they look? Like on
The easiest way, and thank you so much for having
Good.
me on here. The easiest way is really to come to my website, and then from there you can connect to other things that I do, like Instagram. I have a little documentary of that story we talked about me changing my careers.
Okay.
I'm about to have an animation on there explaining more about that energetic clutter concept. So, and that's my name, Tanya Cole-Lesnick. But if somebody's listening, because I know my name can be tricky, I have a simpler URL, which is clearenergeticclutter.com. That will also bring you there.
Okay, cool. Well, very good. So maybe we'll connect in the future since we're literally not that far from each other. So
That would be awesome. Yeah. Thank
thank
you,
you so much,
Karen.
Tanya.
You as well.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Yeah. Bye.